It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to Your Personal Bank, and I'm going to say this. If you missed the last show, I'm going to really encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com, check it out. I really discussed a very, very important topic, and that's financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility, particularly with government and how it affects us, how it's going to could likely affect our economy, our money, everything else. So again, go to yourpersonalbank.com, check it out. We, as I was stating, we have to gain some control over that, and we need to demand that with our politicians and the people that that run our country, whether state, local, or federal. Demand that they treat their money like our own, because it's our money. They don't have any. They act like it's just theirs and they can do with what they want, but it's not truly not. Government has no money. It comes from us, right? It comes from taxpayers, I should say, or they print it, and that's the bottom line. And if they print it, it creates more inflation, which of course can create other issues where cost of goods and services go up. So it's like a hidden tax. It's an hidden increase in costs. And like I said, our current federal government is just complete and total denial. I mean, going around literally talking about this Build Back Better plan, which, by the way, to build something back better means you have to destroy what's there before. You have to dismantle, destroy, and eliminate what's there to build it back, right? If you're going to if there's a house and you want to build it back, you got to destroy the house that's there to build before you can build a new one. And that's the unsaid part. Okay, but they've said it. They want to fundamentally change America, the society, the country we have, the country of opportunity that it's been, the land of opportunity for a couple of centuries. They want to change all that. Now, I don't think most Americans want that. I think we're seeing that quite obviously. But that's what our current administration wants. So we got to remember that and be on the defensive. We got to be on guard. We have to protect ourselves. We are in damage control, folks, until we can get these folks out of there in the next election and vote them out. But as long as they're going to be in complete denial, saying things just completely financially idiotic things like we're going to spend $1.75 trillion and won't cost anything. That's just financially ludicrous, idiocy, okay? And most people recognize it for that and basically kind of laughed it out of the room, so to speak. So then they come, our White House on Build Back Better comes back and says, well, the CBO came out, by the way, and said if they make it permanent, it'll cost more like $4 or $5 trillion, not 1.75. So what do? They respond by saying, well, the CBO is not experienced enough to understand this. That's the Congressional Budget Office, folks. That's CPAs and accountants and people like that. They're more than capable of understanding that stuff, and it's nonpartisan. And then they propose to, to nominate, a communist to the comptroller of the currency, Saul Omarova, who has stated openly, like a year ago, that she wants to eliminate all banking as we know it. Everybody would bank with the Federal Reserve directly. There would be no local or state or national banks. So in other words, the federal government would control everything. They would completely control your money. I don't see any problem with that, do you? And then she also pointed out she'd be happy to see many of the energy industry companies go bankrupt because that would help with climate change. I mean, that's the kind of person that they're wanting to put in charge of regulating banking, all banking in the United States. I mean, think about that. You destroy the banking industry. You destroy the energy industry. What kind of economy are we going to have? It would be dramatic, fundamentally different, that's for sure, from what we have today. So we're fighting other things, like with the vaccine mandates and all these kinds of things, which is just over-the-top government overreach, beyond anything I thought I would ever see in my lifetime. I never thought I would see anything like that in the United States. This article about Navy sailors who refuse COVID vaccine will be discharged and face other administrative actions. I mean, I never thought I'd see this kind of thing. And then close to home, we have, we've all heard about like the school districts and stuff, particularly in Virginia. Well, I've got one here for you right here in Scottsdale, Arizona. In fact, just today, I was talking to a Scottsdale parent who has kids in this school. And actually more than 600 parents now are demanding the resignation of the school board president because he kept a dossier on 47 parents who dared to speak out against his policies at school board meetings. And he had in his documents Social Security numbers, background checks, divorce papers, mortgage documents, trade certifications, and pictures of the parents. Now, this is just nuts, this kind of thing. When you're calling parents domestic terrorists, and we've now found, that the Merrick Garland, head of the FBI, lied to Congress, stating he wasn't doing anything to pursue. He put the memo out to basically because the school board wrote him a letter, and he put the letter out, putting the FBI in charge of handling parents, agreeing that they were domestic terrorists. Said he wasn't going to do anything, but now it comes out, whistleblowers come out and said, yeah, the FBI has been investigating and spying on parents. I mean, what kind of country are we living in? Again, they want to fundamentally change it, and they're absolutely taking every step possible to do so. And this is becoming increasingly apparent to just about everybody. Like I've said, and you've heard me talk about this in other radio shows I've shared, is I think where the progressives, they like to call themselves, I call them regressives because they want to regress to a lesser form of government, a less free form of government, certainly. They're Marxists, frankly. That's what they are. That's the policies they're pursuing. When I see them doing these kinds of things, and I think they recognize what they're doing. I think they recognize they're not going to get reelected. They're going to lose control, but they're going to do as much as they can do for the next year. So we're in damage control. And I would say this to anyone who has a child in a school, a public school, even some private schools, you need to get involved. You need to find out what your kids are being taught. There are some efforts going on in different states I've seen where they're requiring that all curriculum, all books, all things that are being it's called transparency in the schools. This is a good move. The governors of the different states and legislatures need to pursue this, and that is requiring to post online anything curriculum, book-wise, or outside third party, anything that the kids are being exposed to or to being taught. It needs to be full transparency. The parents need to know what the kids are being taught. That's the bottom line. My gosh, it's our property taxes that are paying for these schools for the most part, right? Who are they? That's what's so ironic about it. That's what's so infuriating. I'm a parent myself. Who do they work for? They think they work for their bosses are the teachers unions, right? No, their bosses and who pays for them are actually the parents. And basically, the next election cycle or two, the parents need to stand up across the board and vote them out. Parents should be on the school board, right? Now, it's our fault. I've said this. We got complacent. We fell asleep at the wheel. No more. And this is an issue, like I said, I believe, is the turning point issue. I've talked about this so many times previously, where this was the issue that was going to motivate the people, it was the remember the Alamo moment, the 9/11 moment, the Pearl Harbor moment, whatever you want to call it, that got people motivated and said, you know what, that's it. You're not going to teach my kids a bunch of this stuff that I don't agree with and I don't believe in. And so I'm doing some things. We're going to be working on some things, too, about educating, getting educated about the candidates who are running for these various offices and voting and getting to know who these people are up and down the ballot, not just the top of the ticket, but all the way down the line. And do they match up, for the most part, your belief system or not? If you've just voted one party or the other, I'm just going to say this to you right now. You need to get away from that. Just because maybe you historically voted one way or the other. I can say this. If you voted Democrat and you don't agree with higher taxes and you don't agree with teaching kids racism, basically. You don't agree with many, government overreach and government mandating vaccines and everything else that they're doing, shutting down businesses and everything else. And you don't agree with them fundamentally destroying our economy and our country and the land of opportunity and building it back better to something totally different, basically a Marxist utopia. That's what they're if you don't believe in Marxism, you can't be voting for Democrat, because even if your candidate doesn't believe in that stuff, they might be more moderate. They're going along with it, aren't they? They're allowing it to happen. That's my great disappointment. There's the Marxists, the leftists are in the minority, even in the Democratic Party. Yet they're driving the bus. They've instilled whatever control, fear, whatever in the more moderates. There's been some pushback. Sinema and Manchin are two senators, for example, that have done some pushing back in the Democratic Party. But for the most part, there's been very little. There's no backbone here. Folks, we need leaders who are going to step up and protect our freedoms, who are going to represent us. I'll give you another one that's just I've struggled understanding why governors haven't stepped up more with, for example, the Keystone Pipeline. Let's use that example. I've researched. I'm not an attorney, but I've done some research, and there's constitutional scholars who freely admit that they don't necessarily believe that any president has the right to shut down a private enterprise thing like that. And why there wasn't more pushback from the businesses, lawsuits, and all that other stuff. And why did the states, these are, pipeline was going through a bunch of red states. Why didn't the red state governors stand up and say, no, you're not going to do this. Folks, you keep working. Bring out the National Guard and say, stop us. Because this is detrimental to America, to our citizens, and to our people. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to talk about some more of these things, and I promise we'll get into some solutions what you can do to protect yourself. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And, I've really been discussing a lot of things recently that, frankly, are just frustrating. We're seeing an unraveling of our society, the direction we're heading. I think most people would agree with that. They're not happy with the direction. We're not happy with our leaders, our current administration. They want to fundamentally reshape, change our country. They're spending money like a drunken sailor, putting us farther and farther in debt, which is just going to create more financial problems and challenges going forward. They want to build back better, which means by definition you have to destroy or remove what you had there before. You can't build back a new house until you remove the old one, right? So they want to fundamentally destroy our economy, our society, our form of government, everything, frankly. And it's becoming increasingly obvious to just about anyone who's paying any kind of attention. They're attacking our parents because they're challenging what their kids are being taught in school. They don't like it. Forcing people to inject vaccines, stick needles in their arms, whether they want it or need it or whatever reason. Folks, you do realize something. I'm going to just throw this out there. Whether you agree with vaccines or not is not the issue, and that is not important whatsoever. But if you allow a government to force its citizens to stick a needle in their arm, whether they want to or not, that's all. That's like your bodily autonomy, right? I mean, what else? In other words, what else? What can't they do? My point is, that's kind of like the last straw. That's the last boundary. Sticking something in your body, forcing you to do that. God, folks, that's in the realm of, that's George Orwellian 1984 kind of stuff. That's heavy-duty dictatorship, communism, Marxism. That's serious stuff. That's heavy-duty, serious authoritarianism. Okay? And the steps beyond that just get worse. Okay? we've had this soft authoritarianism. I saw somebody talking about this, and it's true, for a while now, for years, and it's slowly, incrementally, and now it's getting into some hard authoritarianism, like you stick a needle in your arm, you don't have a job, kind of stuff. You can't make a living. We're going to destroy your economic future. That's serious stuff, folks. And if you're not stepping up and standing up against this, what are you going to stand up for? Again, I've said the parents thing, the thing about calling parents domestic terrorists, man, I think that was, in my opinion, I think they've realized that was a huge mistake, because as much as I'm talking about a lot of money stuff and other things, and those are important, and really, the debt and all this other things, and the borders and Afghanistan and the economy and inflation and everything else. Oh, yes, all those things are very important. But when you're talking about my kids, man, that's 1,000,000 times more important. The future of my kids is more important to me than just about anything. And I would say most parents would agree with that. You don't mess with Mama Bear and Papa Bear. You know what I'm trying to say? And you're not going to intimidate them. And I'm proud to say that's what's been going on. That's been the real motivation behind this movement to move towards pushing out what we have and gaining and getting our freedoms back, right? Retaking our country. And if you're not a part of it already, I'm going to tell you and encourage you to get involved, because this is becoming part of an historic generational movement. This is a freedom event in many ways, like the Civil War was, or like the Revolution was. You don't have to fight, and it doesn't have to be a battle fought with guns, but it's a battle, it's a war. And you can find your place in this. Find your place where you can get involved and influence others, or help out, or support a candidate you believe in, or donate to them, or stop. Hey, if you're sending your kids or grandkids to be indoctrinated into things that you don't believe in, stop. Do the homeschool, online school, private school stuff. Look at the options. Homeschooling's doubled in the last year or so. Awesome. We need to see more of that. We need to see a mass exodus out of schools until the schools are cleaned up and the school boards and many of the teachers that are there are gone and removed. So they need to be out of there until it gets fixed, right? Change, or get them out, or both. It's that kind of stuff. We need to demand more of our leaders. We need more leaders. We've got a few governors that have been standing up for some things. We need more of that. I'm in a border state, Arizona. I have to admit, we have a Republican governor, yet there's some things he's done that I like, but I'm also very disappointed in many things, because here's another thing I don't understand. The federal government is supposed to protect the border, right? And it's pretty obvious they're not doing their job, to anyone who's paying attention. Well, why are the governors waiting around? Why can't the government declare a state of emergency? Governors can do that. They have the perfect legal right to do that. And raise the National Guard or the state militia or whatever. I was part of the Missouri National Guard, okay? I reported to the governor, not the feds. And put them on the border and protect our borders. In other words, do something. Why are you waiting on the federal government? There's this idea has gone on for far too long that the federal government gives power to the states. Folks, have you read the Constitution recently? If you've ever read the Constitution, it's called enumerated powers, and it states very simply in the Bill of Rights that the federal government gets to do these certain items, and it lists off what those things are. And then it states very clearly, and all other powers are reserved to the states or the people. In other words, the states don't have to stand back and wait and ask questions. They just need to act. Protect, if your border's getting overrun by illegals, protect that border. Do something about it. And by the way, The leftists, the liberals, have been already doing that for a long time. See, a lot of the more conservative types have been far too nice and trying to play by the rules. Yet they're not even playing by the rules. They're not even understanding the constitutional rules. You know, we have sanctuary cities around this country, like Los Angeles and Seattle and others, that don't follow federal immigration law. They just basically declared them null and void. They're not playing by the rules. There's nowhere in the Constitution or federal law or state law that they should be allowed to do that, but they just decided we don't want to enforce those laws, so they did it. And look, whether you're for or against marijuana rules or whatever, I don't really care. But there's a bunch of states in this country. The federal law still says that marijuana is illegal. Yet a bunch of states that said we don't like that and voted and decided to change it and not recognize it. We can do the same thing on just about any other topic, including immigration, the borders, or anything else. I love something that Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, did recently, where he was basically stated if there's a vaccine mandate implemented in Florida, they're going to opt out of OSHA and create their own OSHA under the state of Florida. Kudos to him, because that's exactly what needs to happen. And he has the legal right to do it. The states have the rights, folks, not the feds. We've allowed the feds to trample our freedoms for far too long. We need to step up and start taking those back. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to talk about that further, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. And, you know, again, I've been talking about a lot of these things that are frustrating the direction of our country, the government, federal government overreach in particular, you know, doing things like shutting down Keystone Pipeline, allowing, you know, folks across the border, you know, doing the things that, and then people just kind of go along with it. And not having strong leaders like governors standing up and saying, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. There's no reason, in my opinion at least, a governor couldn't declare a state of emergency, particularly a border governor like here in Arizona, and just start protecting the border themselves. They have the resources, okay? There's a National Guard, right? There's a guard in each state to do things like that. It could be done. They just need to step up. And I think part of the problem, and I was really trying to figure some of these things out. Like I was saying, what are some, you know, a lot of people say, I'm with you all the way. I agree with you and all that. What can I do? Because we've been so non-involved. There's the far left that have been the radical left, you would call them the Marxists, that are incredibly politically involved. That's their life, right? And most of us that were more in the, I guess you want to call freedom-loving Americans, tend to, you know, we've lived our lives, we raise our family, build our career, our business or whatever, we vote, we do what we're supposed to do, but pay our taxes, and we kind of figure things will work out, and we're realizing that's not enough if we want to preserve our freedoms. And so it's like, what do we do now? We're motivated, and I've just learned something recently. I'm going to be getting more involved with some of these things, but for example, what I've learned is the Republican Party, for example, when you have all these people running for the primaries and stuff for various offices, whatever those are, you know, senators, congresspeople, governors, state offices, all that, they kind of let them all fight it out. And then whoever wins the primary, that's who they back. And oftentimes, and that helped me understand why so often we've had Republican candidates that many call rhinos, or maybe not what we consider the best representatives of who we would want to represent us, our values system, right? And so we end up voting so many times, I know I have, having to like pull the lever for the lesser of two evils, right? So it's like, because the most popular candidate, the most well-known, or the one that's been in politics for a while because they got the upper hand in the primary, so they won the primary, and now they're automatically the candidate and the party gets behind them. Where you can make the biggest difference, I've come to realize, is helping a candidate that you support or believe in agree with their belief system, help them win the primary. Because probably not even a third of the voters vote in the primaries. So it's a far lower turnout, far lower numbers. You have a much greater impact. I have a good friend of mine that started a Republican club. They started doing some town hall meetings. This was before the last election, and they helped get a number of just regular folks who had never been in politics before, but saw the problems and wanted to do something, make a difference, and help them get over the finish line in the primaries, which then they automatically then became the candidate, the Republican candidate, and then the Republican Party gave them the support and all that stuff they needed, the money and the campaign stuff to help them get over and win the general election. So you can't wait until after the primary if you want the best candidate. So find out who your local representatives are, who's running for Senate, who's running for your House seats, both federal and state level, who's running for governor, attorney general, those kinds of positions, and look and determine who you think is the candidate that fits your belief system. They'll represent you the best, and then help them win the primary. I'm going to be doing some of that stuff with the radio show and various things in whatever ways I can. It's just through some nonprofits and various things. You'll see as we go forward. These are some of the things where we, as regular, just average Americans, can make the most difference. Or, as I've often said to people, we can do, if you haven't heard about it, many of you have, but this truck driver in New Jersey who unseated the second most powerful Democrat in a heavily blue state, New Jersey. He was just a truck driver, got fed up. By the way, the rest of the story, a lot of people don't know. He wanted to get a concealed carry permit and was denied. He was told by a sheriff, don't even bother, you won't get one. And he thought that was a government overreach, and that frustrated him. So he ran for state senate against the president of the state senate, the second most powerful politician in the state of New Jersey. He spent a total, like $150 in his primary and something like $3,000 or so total in the entire race, while his opponent spent several $100,000, and he won. We need more truck drivers. We need more average Americans. We need more regular folks doing exactly the same thing. They're not doing it for the glory. They're not doing it to pad their coffers or create a career. We don't need career politicians. In fact, we need term limits. We need regular Joes and Janes, folks that love this country, want to preserve their freedom for all of us and the future generations, and just want to serve the country and make a difference, like I did when I served in the military. It's no difference. That's what we need more of. Stay tuned in the last segment. I'll talk about some financial stuff you can do to protect yourself and gain more freedom, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. So we're going to wrap this up today. We've really been discussing what a lot of the things that we can do that can make a difference. And if you missed some of the things in the previous segments, some of it was solid gold, folks. Things I've learned recently, even from not being politically active really most of my life until recently, becoming much more so, again, because of the things that, the attacks on our freedoms, I believe, and need to protect those. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com. Check out the previous segments. You can listen to any of the previously recorded shows, by the way, and really lays out some really good things you can do in addition to just maybe even run for office yourself, obviously. And by the way, I've said this before. If somebody is going to run for office and their belief system is, or if you know of a candidate that you think their belief system would kind of match up with ours, please contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I'd love to vet them, and then if they have an interest, I'll be happy to do an interview and give them some exposure. So, because again, this is fundamentally different. I get this is a financially focused show, but without the freedom to be able to do what we can do economically, what's the point? If we go into a situation where many of these things that our current administration wants to do, if we allow those things to happen, our banking industry get destroyed, for example, by the current nominee for comptroller of the currency. Again, contact your representative. Say no to that nomination. That's crazy. We don't need a communist running our banking system, or being the chief regulator of our banking system, with her goal being, and Saul Amarova, by the way, who stated purpose, her stated goal, this is her, not me, eliminate banking as we know it. Wiping out an entire industry. Look, you can love banks or hate them, but if you wipe them out, you're going to effectively destroy our economy. I think any reasonable, rational person would agree with that. My point is, you need to take control of your finances too, and your economic situation, and not be relying on the government retirement system, because that's just going to put more money in their pockets. You got to starve them, right? And there's many legal ways to do that, to reduce your taxes. Plus, look, if you think taxes are going to go up in the future and you want to reduce them, creating a tax-free bucket of money just flat out makes sense, okay? But it's also, in my opinion, becoming a patriotic duty. If you have the opportunity to ensure less dollars go to our current federal government and the overreach that they're doing, and in effect strangling them, it's your patriotic duty to do so. Plus, it benefits you if you pay less taxes. I mean, how is that a bad thing? Let your money grow tax-free. You can do that with your personal bank. You can do it all. You can grow it. You can access it. You can pass it on to your next generation tax-free. So contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 for more information, or yourpersonalbank.com. Look, we're already in an inflationary cycle. How much longer it's going to last? How much worse is it going to get? Hard to say, but I shared in previous couple of shows ago where the consumer price index was at 6.2% year over year, which is the highest since 1990, so the highest in 30 years. The producer price index was at 8.6%, which is the highest ever recorded. And that's the prices the producers are paying, which is usually a good barometer what inflation is going to be in about 6 months from now. Folks, I highly doubt, based on the CPI and the PPI and everything's going on, that inflation is going to be lower in 6 months from now than it is now. In fact, everything's pointing it to being higher. And even the Federal Reserve's admitting it's probably going to last through late 2022 at least. And let's face it, they've been wrong so many times. I'd be shocked if it was over by then. I'll just say that from a personal experience situation. My point is, if inflation's concerning you, you need to get in. You need to diversify into some inflation, interest rate sensitive assets like your personal bank, so that if inflation goes up, interest rates go up, you're going to make more money. It's just that simple. Historically, these policies paid 7-8% in a normal interest rate environment, and if you go back to where we had double-digit inflation, the dividends were double-digit. Okay, so it's relative. It correlates. So again, you can reduce your taxes. I think that's a good thing. Legally, you can reduce your risk to inflation. I think that's getting more and more important every day. You can increase the liquidity on access on your money, so you have access to 50 to 85% of your money day one without any penalties, taxes, restrictions, or anything of that matter. It's your money. You got access to more dollars. Again, I believe that's important. You can also, though, create positive arbitrage. And positive arbitrage is not that complicated. It's nothing more than you actually earn more on your money than you get charged when you use it and access it. And if you understand positive arbitrage, you will understand that you will have more money, period. It's mathematical, folks. I know some people get a little hung up on it. They struggle a little bit. But here's the bottom line. If you invest money, you get a return on that money, you can do that. But if you add positive arbitrage to it, you actually increase your rate of return. It's that simple. Most of my clients are averaging 2.5% to 3% positive arbitrage. So whatever your rate of return is, we increase it by that much more. So if you're getting a 7% rate, you're now getting 9.5%, 10%. If you're getting a 10% rate of return, we can increase that to 12.5% or 13%. Why is this so important? Look, folks, if inflation continues, the dollar's not going to be worth as much. Your money has to work more for you, right? The dollars have to go farther. It takes more dollars to buy that piece of meat in the grocery store or fill up that tank of gas. I just filled up my truck today. It's $3.75 a gallon, folks. I haven't seen that in years, okay? It costs that much more to fill up the tank. You know what I'm talking about. So what can you do to offset this, to protect yourself? And frankly, it's part of your patriotic duty is economic freedom is one of the freedoms that we're allowed to enjoy. It's a constitutional right. It goes back to the Virginia delegation, the Virginia Constitution and all that predated the U.S. Constitution, the Virginia one. And it talks about those. In fact, the founders got a lot of their ideas from it, and it talks more, the Virginia Declarations, about the right to own property. And in fact, Jefferson and Franklin and those, when they were drafting the Declaration of Independence and these things, and we have the right, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They had discussions about the phrases. They were wanting to be very, very intentional about what they said, because they understood what they were saying was going to be, they were speaking to future generations, not just themselves. And so what they said, they weighed the words very deliberately. And there was significant discussion about the statement of pursuit of happiness as the right to own property. In other words, the pursuit of happiness from the founders' original intentions was always wrapped around, partly at least, in economic freedom. The right to own property, for example. And if you look at any communist, socialist, Marxist, dictatorship type of government, what do they take away from the people? The right to own property, the right to have assets, to have control of money and assets and property and things like that. Look at China, look at Russia, look at Cuba, look at North Korea, any of those places. And by the way, China is the current administration's model, folks. Okay? Am I saying people in China don't own anything? No. Is it much more difficult than here currently? Absolutely. Do you have property rights there? No. In fact, I have a friend of mine who taught in China for 3 years until fairly recently. And he talked about, for example, and he witnessed this. He said, when China decides to build a highway, for example, what they do is they draw a line, and their highways are straight lines. It's the most efficient from one city to another, for example. And if your house happens to be on that line, what they do, and he saw this firsthand, the officials come to your door and they say, here's some money for your house, and then obviously typically it's far less than what it's really worth, but they say, you take this and you leave in 24 hours, or if you don't, we shoot you. He saw this firsthand, folks. That's the kind of rights they have, okay? That's what a communist country looks like. My dad escaped from it. He lived it. I have family lived it, who lived through it. I've seen it. I have family history of it, in it, okay, folks? You lose the pursuit of happiness, the right to own property, which would include any asset for that matter. And by the way, for those of you that are cryptocurrency fans, do you realize if this Build Back Better thing gets passed? Well, actually, I should back up. In the infrastructure bill, there is how they're going to pay for it. One of the provisions in there to pay for it, by the way, folks, is more enforcement on cryptocurrency. They're expecting to pick up, I think it's $30, $40, $50 billion, something like that, in the next 10 years on cryptocurrency regulation. Now, we don't know what that means yet, do we? But is that going to impact cryptocurrency? I think so, at least in some form or fashion. My point is they're going to take away from it. And I heard something just the other day from Larry Elder, for example, and I thought this was great, really great. He talked about in 1900, the federal government took from businesses 9% of their revenues on average. That was the statistical average. Today, that average is 32%. And depending on what type of business they're in and the kind of mandates they have to employ, the requirements that businesses have to do for employees and various other things, the amount of revenues that the federal government either generates or mandates can approach 50% of a business's revenues. Okay? The taxable portion, what they collect, is like 32%. Now, is our government 3 times better than it was in 1900? In my opinion, the answer is no. We're paying for a lot more, yet we have much less freedom. And I think it was Franklin who said, if you have a government that can give you something, it has enough power to give you something, that same government will have enough power to take it away also. Take that or anything else away. Look, if a government has the power to force you to stick a needle in your arm, or you lose your job, they have the power to do just about anything else if we allow it. Are you going to stand up and fight against this? And you know what? It doesn't take the majority. It just takes a few who are willing to get out of the closet. I talked about this being closet conservatives, about being one persona in public and another in private. Folks, no one can say that about me. I'm on the radio, and I'm the same in private as I am in public. I share from my heart my beliefs, my feelings about these things, and you all know what I'm talking, my motivations, why I'm doing this, because it's important to me, and I think it's important. I love my country. I love this country and what's done for me and my family. My dad escaped from communism for a better life for him and his legacy, and I'm that legacy, folks. And so I'm honoring my father. That's how important it is to me. And I served in the military also to support and defend our freedom. Gain economic freedom. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for who you are and who you believe in, and don't apologize for it. And I will help you on the economic side if you contact me at toll-free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. As always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank Show.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and writers may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.